Hello, welcome you all. How are you? I hope you enjoyed lesson 1 from unit 2. There was a debate between two students, Karma and Kavita. Karma was speaking for the motion, and he has said that using a single language is better than using multiple languages. I hope that you all made your mind up. Using single language is better or using multiple languages is better. What do you think of this? In my today's class, I will help you what is good. I will entirely discuss about what Kavita has said. She was speaking against the motion, means her idea was different than that of Karma. Karma said single language is good, but it's turn of Kavita. She is going to say using multiple languages is good. You make up your mind what happens and what Kavita says. Come on, let's discuss about what Kavita has said in her speech. Kavita is saying, Mr. Chairperson, respected teachers and friends, thank you, Mr. Timal Sinha, for giving me this platform to present my view on this issue. As we know, every year several languages die out. With their death, the knowledge inherent there dies too. Though the previous speaker argued that the fewer the languages are, the easier the life will be, I strongly disagree with his arguments. Yes, Kavita is speaking against the motion. She is speaking what Karma has said, against what Karma has said. She says that she is also sure that every year many languages die out. But what happens to the culture? What happens to the knowledge behind those languages if they die out? Yes, the knowledge is also, that will also die. That will also come to an end. The cultures related to the language, that will also come to an end. So she is speaking against the motion. She strongly disagrees what Karma has said. She disagrees that using single language is better, but she agrees using multiple languages is better than using single language. What do you think? What Kavita will further say? Can you predict? Can you think of what Kavita is going to say again further? She says using multiple languages is good. Then what different details is she going to make? Okay, you think, and I'll help you. Mr. Chairperson, language influences our thought, and our thought influences reality of the world around us. It means we perceive the world as per our linguistic background. Language carries culture. Cultural and linguistic diversity may have a reciprocal relationship. Reciprocal means mutual, one-to-one. Therefore, there are obvious disadvantages of having only one global language. Firstly, it would mean that all other languages would certainly disappear, and along with them, their cultures too. Each culture is unique with its own way of life and own perspective of the world. Cultural diversity boosts tourism, because it attracts tourists from different parts of the world. The loss of languages results in the loss of cultures, and the loss of cultures leads to collapse of the tourism industry, because there would be no reason to travel for pleasure and interest. Yeah, you enjoyed hearing me. What Kavita says, language should not be decline. Yeah, that should not decline, extinct. If language disappears, the cultures, customs, beliefs, norms, values connected to the language will also disappear. Because language and culture are interrelated. Language is related to the culture, and culture is related to the language. They have a reciprocal relationship. If language goes out, dies out, culture definitely will die out. That's why language is most important for people. Yeah, people have to preserve language. Small ethnic groups, they are using vernacular language, local languages, their ethnic languages. And with their ethnic language, they are enjoying their ethnic cultures. Right? What cultures you prefer? You prefer your culture, American culture, or European culture? Which culture? Definitely you prefer, you love to your culture. If you lose your language, then your culture also gets lost. That's why we have to preserve the language. It doesn't matter how many languages are there in the world, in the community, or in the society, and how many languages are people speaking, people using. It doesn't matter. Using language is their identity. So we have to preserve the languages. That's what Kavita is saying. And another thing Kavita says, cultural diversity. Each culture is very unique. You know, all the cultures in the world, they are not similar to one and another. They are different. You know, different cultures have their own type of, distinct type of norms and values and their importance. Because cultural diversity boosts tourism. Have you seen people visiting your places? You must have visited new places in your locality, in your country. Suppose if you go to Ghalegaon in Pokhara, you can see the people of Ghalegaon, Ghale people's culture, which might be different than your and our culture and mine culture. Suppose you are living in the eastern part of Nepal. If you go to Solukhumbu, if you go to Khotang and Okhaldunga, or even Bhojpur, people living in Bhojpur may have different culture than that of yours. They are speaking different languages than that you are speaking here. So language and culture are related. When there is no language, then there is no culture. Culture is the identity, language is the identity of people. And tourists love to visit new places where they can enjoy the new cultures. They can enjoy the cultural values, different cultural values, norms, traditions. People are customary to do different things, not different things than that of others, but they do the same thing that their forefathers and their ancestors were doing, their seniors were doing. What you do today will be followed by your generations. What your former generation did, then you are following at present. That is how the culture inherits from one generation to another generation. That is why language is important as culture is. Culture is very important like language. When there is no language, if the language doesn't survive, then no culture will survive. That's why what we have to think, Kavita is saying that we have to preserve languages, local languages as well. And using different languages boost up different cultures. People coming from another countries, they love to see the local culture and enjoy the local culture. This brings, where there is cultural diversity in the community, then that is really appealing and attracting to different people, that boost tourism. Similarly, the loss of languages results in the loss of cultures. That's why we have to preserve many languages, different languages. Yes, we have the same language and similar cultures. This finally leads to decline of national economy of countries which will rely on tourism industry. Yes, Kavita says that the tourism industry flourishes with the preservation of a different culture. If cultures are distinct, then that will cause the tourism industry to decline, go down. And the countries like ours is relying on tourism industry for its economical growth. That's why we have to preserve the culture. When we preserve the culture and language, well, we have to preserve the language, because language and culture are interrelated. If there is a preservation in one part, one aspect, then the next aspect will also be definitely and automatically preserved. That's what Kavita is saying in this paragraph. Mr. Chairperson, using fewer languages also creates identity problems. The ethnic groups without their own language and culture lose their linguistic and cultural identity. Variety in literature is only possible through linguistic and cultural differences. It is impossible if we have a single global language. Likewise, each language has its own taste and own distinct quality. For example, the Sanskrit language is said to have musical quality. All these qualities get lost if people start using a single language all over the world. Furthermore, the fewer the languages are in use, the less the vocabulary in practice. Therefore, the less vocabulary in practice, the less imaginative and creative work is possible. Yes, this is what Kavita has said. The language is identity as culture is. If people lose their language, then their cultural identity will also get affected. That gets lost. It is better, it is rational to preserve the languages, because all languages have their distinct type of quality, different types of quality. Let's take an example of Sanskrit language. The Sanskrit language is known as the mother of all languages of the world. And it has a power, it has a quality. It sounds like musical language. It is said to have the Sanskrit language is said to have the musical quality in it. That's why preservation of language is a must. That's what Kavita is saying. In her speech, she is speaking against the motion. Her ideas are different that of karma. What karma has told is quite different than that Kavita is speaking. She is putting force in preservation of languages, multiple languages. And what she says that the fewer the languages are in use. Yes, think how very brilliant idea. The fewer the languages are in use, the less vocabulary in practice. If single language is used and people don't have more vocabularies, then that there lacks the practice, vocabulary practice. They can't communicate well on the lack of vocabulary. So we have to know many languages. We have to use many languages. The less vocabulary in practice and the less imaginative and creative work is possible. Oh my God, what a brilliant idea Kavita is saying. The less vocabulary in practice, then the less imaginative and creative ideas, creative work is possible. थोरै शब्दावली भयो, थोरै शब्दहरू मात्रै जान्ने हो भनेदेखि इमेजिनेटिभ हुन पनि सकिँदैन अनि क्रिएटिभ वर्क गर्न पनि सकिँदैन, त्यो पनि सम्भव छैन। त्यसैले भाषा मान्छेको पहिचानसँग जोडिएको हुन्छ, भाषा मान्छेको कल्चरसँग, संस्कृतिसँग जोडिएको हुन्छ। भाषालाई हामीले डिस्टिङ्क्ट गर्ने हो भनेदेखि हैन यो एक्सटिङ्क्ट भएर जाने हो भने, हराएर जाने हो भनेदेखि के हुन सक्छ? संस्कार, संस्कृति, मान्छेको संस्कृति, साहित्य सबलाई असर गर्न सक्छ। मान्छेले थोरै भोक्याबुलरी युज गर्छन् अनि उनीहरूको कल्पनशीलता, उनीहरूको रचनात्मक काम त्यसमा पनि कमी आउँछ। त्यसैले धेरै ल्याङ्ग्वेजहरू हामीले बचाउनुपर्छ, धेरै ल्याङ्ग्वेजहरूलाई हामीले जोगाउनुपर्छ। द्याट्स वाट कविता इज सेइङ। Kavita further says, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to ask Karma if he could understand all the varieties, dialects of his mother tongue. As we know, even the dialects are often intelligible to all the speakers of the same language. Yes, Kavita is asking Karma, she is questioning Karma. If he understands different dialects of his language, language is one standard, it has got some standard quality, and dialects, they are the sub-languages related to the standard language. They are vernacular language. There are social dialect, regional dialect, and these dialects are different, right? Different. One dialect is not totally similar to another dialect, and one dialect is not wholly similar to standard language. Each standard language has dialects. So she is asking Karma if he understands all the dialects of his language. She says to Karma, and what Kavita further says, the dialects are often unintelligible to all speakers of the same language. This is what Kavita has said, and she says that it is the waste of time to discuss upon such issues, such debate, where there is using single language is better than using multiple languages. She says it is a waste of time to discuss on this matter. using multiple languages is far more better than using single language. That's what we discussed in this lesson. Let's see what Kavita has said, Okay, what Kavita has said is just discussed now. Let's see. She was speaking against the motion. Using a single language is better than using multiple languages is best. That was what Kavita was speaking to. And her main points are every year several languages die out. And she says language and culture is interrelated. Cultural diversity boosts tourism, attracting people. Linguistic and cultural diversity have reciprocal relationship. Along with loss of languages, their cultures also disappear. That is what Kavita has said. It affects tourism industry and entire economy. It creates identity problem to ethnic groups. Each language has its own taste and distinct quality. These are the main points that Kavita has spoken in the debate. Now let's see furthermore what she has said. This is against the motion, not for the motion. Every year several languages die out. With them the knowledge inherent there dies too. This is one point. Dear students, please you have to notice that this is against the motion, not for the motion. There is one typical correction or editing mistake is there. Keys for the motion, no keys for the motion, but that is keys against the motion. Please you get corrected. Come on, quick correct it. This is against the motion that Kavita is saying. What she says, language influences our thought. One point. Language influences our thought, which then influences the reality of the world around us. And language carries culture. Cultural and linguistic diversity have a reciprocal meaning, relationship. Having only one global language is not good. This is the point that we have to know. Each culture is unique. Yes, this is quite important that we have to know. Each culture is unique. Each culture has its unique types of norms, values and traditions. And if a language disappears along with the culture also disappears. That's why we have to use multiple languages. We have to preserve multiple languages so as not to let its culture die out. Cultural diversity boosts tourism. The loss of cultures leads to the collapse of tourism industry. When the culture is lost, distinct cultures are disturbed, then that affects the tourism industry in a bad way. Using few languages also creates identity problem. That's what against what Karma has said. And the ethnic groups without their own language and culture lost their linguistic and cultural identity. And variety in literature is only possible through linguistic and cultural differences. Every year, so many languages are dying out. And with the death of those languages, their culture, their surroundings, their other unique types of norms and values are also going away. They are declining. They are being extinct. So we have to preserve the culture. Because cultures are related to the development of tourism also. Kavita has emphasized her saying in her speech. What she says that tourism can easily boost when there are multiple cultures. Multiple cultures are the source of income. They are the source of foreign income for the people of small locality. People living in our distant villages, rural areas, people living in small groups, small ethnic groups, their cultures are different than that of the people living in majority in groups. Their cultures are very distinct, very different. That's why we have to preserve the culture. When we preserve the culture, we not only preserve them, but we also preserve the language. And from the side of language also, it is similar. We have to preserve all types of languages, because language, in the loss of language, creates identity problem in people. Their identity will get lost. When there is no language preservation, when the language is lost, then their identity, personal information, personal introduction is also lost. We are Nepalese people. Nepalese people should always preserve the Nepalese culture, and we have to be happy with the Nepalese culture. Following culture on culture, there is a pleasure, there is delight. People want to live in happiness. That's why they have to preserve their own language. They have to use their own languages. It doesn't mean that we have to stick out in one language, in our culture too, only in our culture and language. But we have to learn so many languages. We have to know so many languages. And when we know the languages, then we can know the cultures. And there is a cultural and linguistic understanding. And these cultural and linguistic understanding are preserved with the preservation of language. That's what Kavita is saying. And with this, today's class is over. I hope you all enjoyed a lot. This is the reading text, and I will help you giving some questions, and I'll conduct one more lesson related to vocabulary teaching. And there are so many difficult words in this chapter, and I'll help you in that in vocabulary in the next episode to come. Okay, keep watching Kriti Television. All the students, be safe, stay safe at your home, enjoy learning with us, and enjoy learning with Kriti Television. Till next episode, bye bye. Thank you.